Hi there, language enthusiasts. Welcome to a deep dive into sociolinguistics. Sociolinguistics is the study of how language interacts with society, examining how social factors influence the way we speak and how our speech in turn reflects and shapes societal norms. While it is a branch of linguistics, sociolinguistics goes beyond the technical analysis of syntax or phonetics. It explores the connections between language and identity, power, culture, and the structures of human interaction. At its core, sociolinguistics asks questions like, why do people from different regions speak the same language in completely different ways? How do gender norms sneak into our speech patterns? And why do some of us switch between languages or dialects depending on the setting? By tackling these questions, sociolinguistics uncovers how language shapes identity and society, proving that communication is never just communication. Small note on switching between languages, or otherwise known as code switching. Code switching is a window into identity, so let's talk briefly about code switching. Code switching is one of the most fascinating phenomena in sociolinguistics. It happens when someone alternates between two languages, dialects, or even styles of speech in a single conversation. For example, someone might speak standard English at work, but shift to African American vernacular English with friends. Why does this happen? Well, there's a few reasons for that. First of all, context and audience. We adapt our speech to fit the social settings or the people we're talking to. And number two, identity. Code switching can signal belonging to a particular group or culture. For example, many Mexican Americans speak Spanglish. Spanglish, for those who do not know, is the ultimate mashup of Spanish and English. Is what happens when speakers mix elements of both languages in everyday conversations. Think of it as a linguistic blend where words, grammar, and expressions from the two languages combine into something entirely unique. In the US, the term Spanglish is widely used to describe this hybrid style of speaking, often involving Spanish with a generous sprinkling of English loanwords. And number three, practical reasons. Sometimes there's no perfect word in one language, so we code switch. We borrow words from different languages. This is not just random. Code switching is highly structured and reflects a deep understanding of social norms. Okay, sociolinguistics isn't just about observing language, it's about questioning why we use it the way we do. And researchers collect data from conversations, interviews, and surveys, but they also go a step further. They interrogate the social structures behind the data. Take nicknames, for example. Research shows that men often use nicknames like buddy or slim with each other, while women tend to use first names or terms of endearment. But this simple observation leads to deeper questions. Why do men and women use different naming conventions? What makes gender a relevant category in these interactions in the first place? And what do nicknames reveal about relationships and social dynamics? Well, it doesn't stop there. Sociolinguistics also ask if focusing on men versus women reinforces binary gender norms. They explore how factors like age, ethnicity, or class intersect with these trends. This constant cycle of analysis and reflection makes sociolinguistics dynamic and thought-provoking. One of sociolinguistics' main goals is to reveal how societal norms are baked into the way we use language. Titles, pronouns, and terms of endearment all carry cultural expectations about roles and identities. Take, for example, gender. Many languages encode gender right into their grammar. In Spanish, for example, words like amigo, male friend, or amiga, female friend, reflect a binary view of gender. In English, titles like sir and mom highlight both respect and gender of the person being addressed. But these norms aren't static. They evolve over time. For example, the rise of gender-neutral pronouns like they, them in English reflects growing awareness of non-binary identities. Similarly, Spanish-speaking activists have proposed inclusive alternatives like amix or amiga. By documenting such shifts, sociolinguists show how language adapts to changing societal values. These changes may or may not ultimately become part of the language we use every day, but there's certainly efforts to make language change for different, sometimes political views or political motivations. To truly understand language, we need to examine it in its social context. Words like Spanish speaker or bilingual might seem straightforward, but they're loaded with implications about identity and culture. For example, a Spanish speaker in Mexico might use different vocabulary and grammar than one in Spain or Argentina. Being bilingual often reflects a multicultural identity with unique experiences and challenges. Labels like American Sign Language user, for example, emphasize the culture and linguistic richness of deaf communities. So by exploring these social dimensions, sociolinguistics expand our understanding of language beyond the words themselves. Now, here's a key takeaway. Language is inherently social. It's how we build relationships, share ideas, and organize society. But it also reveals how we categorize the world. Calling someone a Spanish speaker links language use to cultural identity. Identifying as bilingual reflects not just linguistic skill, but often a connection to multiple cultures. Referring to someone as an ASL user highlights the importance of visual communication in deaf culture. So by studying these labels, sociolinguistics uncover how language mirrors and shapes the social world. Now, why is human language so unique? Well, human language stands apart from animal communication in three key ways. First of all, discreteness. We combine small units like sounds and words to create infinite meanings. Change one sound in cat to make bat, and you have completely altered the meaning. Animals, by contrast, use mostly fixed signals tied to specific situations. Number two, displacement. Humans can talk about things that aren't here, past events, future plans, or abstract ideas like freedom, for example. Most animals can only communicate about what's immediately happening right there. And number three, productivity. With a limited set of rules, we can produce an infinite number of sentences. A sentence like, the cat wearing a bow tie is on a spaceship, for example, is entirely new, but still makes sense, right? Unlike animal communication, human language is culturally transmitted. You are born with the ability to learn a language, but the one you learn depends on your environment. For example, a baby born to Spanish-speaking parents in Japan will grow up speaking Japanese if raised there. This cultural transmission makes human language flexible and adaptive, setting it apart from instinctive animal signals. We've also got something called symbols and icons, and this is how language also conveys meaning. So symbols are arbitrary links between form and meaning, like the word tree, for example, which doesn't resemble an actual tree. And then we have icons, which are signs that resemble their reference, like the drawing of a tree, right? There is also prescriptive and descriptive grammar. So prescriptive grammar lays down rules about how people should speak a language, and descriptive grammar observes how people actually use language in real life. Sociolinguistics favors the descriptive approach, focusing on how language functions in society rather than policing correctness. So, a big one here, language and society. They are intertwined, and by studying how people address one another, use slang or shift between languages, sociolinguistics reveal deeper cultural and social dynamics. In short, sociolinguistics isn't just about language, it's about us. So let's keep exploring how the words we use shape the world we live in. When confronting with how we wish to describe the grammar, we face the issue of competence and performance. Chomsky said that it is the linguist's task to describe what language users know about their language, that is their competence, not what they do with their language, that is their performance. Chomsky said that linguistic theory is concerned with an ideal speaker-listener in a completely homogeneous speech community, who knows its language perfectly and is unaffected by conditions such as memory limitations, distractions, shifts of attention, and errors in applying his knowledge of the language in his performance. But if we want to study actual linguistic performance, we must consider a variety of factors, of which the underlying competence of the speaker-hearer is only one. The study of language is like the study of other empirical phenomena. It is exactly this interaction that mostly interests Labov, the most influential scholar in the field of sociolinguistics. He maintains that the linguistic behavior of individuals cannot be understood without knowledge of the communities that they belong to. That is the focus of sociolinguistics, and that's the difference between sociolinguistics in a way from Chomskyan linguistics. So we are concerned with real language in use, not with the idealized competence of ideal speakers. This difference is also methodological because syntacticians will use grammatical judgment, while sociolinguists will focus more on production. From this perspective, language users must know social norms, what topics in what contexts are appropriate, and which ones aren't. When to keep silent, what forms to make a question are okay among friends, and what other forms to make a question is okay with your boss only. Further, there is a communicative competence and grammatical competence. The first one may be independent of the second one. Someone may understand the words, yo, what's up, but not understand that it is a form of greeting. And in the second one, a second language learner may use the correct polite form to address someone, but might get the wrong order wrong. So the problem here is that language speakers can use different ways also to express the same meaning. For example, someone can use the following sentence: the car needs washed in some contexts. And in other contexts, they might say the car needs washing or the car needs to be washed, right? So these different forms are called variants, and they are socially meaningful. So variants can be regional, such as washroom in Canada and bathroom in the US or toilet in the UK, or depend on social groups. Sociolinguistics is concerned how language is actually used in real life, not as a mere idealized abstraction. There's also lexical and morphological variation. Such variations are constrained by limitations. So you cannot make up words. You have to follow certain constraints, right? So to talk about language, we must tell apart individuals and groups together with the relationships between people within and across groups. One way to think about it is language user identities. In social theory, identity isn't fixed attributes of people and groups, but are dynamically constructed aspects which emerge through social behavior. We are mostly concerned with social identity. Identity is defined as the linguistic construction of membership in one or more social groups. Identities aren't fixed categorical affiliations such as men and women, but nuanced ways of being that we construct. Our identities are fluid, and we do not have a single identity, but multiple levels of identity. Likewise, group identities are constantly being negotiated, and they may vary over time and context, such as being, for example, educated or being lighter or having darker complexion, depending on the context. We must remember that other forms of social categorizations are only relevant if we actually decide to revolve our lives around them, such as, for example, social class, gender, race, etc. In some contexts, other categories will take precedence, such as, for example, educational background, if someone's looking for a job, or if someone's traveling, nationality, etc. Now, the construction of identities is not done in vacuum, but has to do with the relationships of self and other. So, similarity and difference are also central to the process of construction. Two people interested in jogging, for example, may construct their identities using jargon specific to running, and a third person who's never tried running seriously may use words such as whatchamacallit, for example, if he doesn't know how to name a certain specific object that people use for running, right? Another aspect of identity, which is a focus on sociolinguistics, is authenticity. Thus, linguistic groups and social categories such as gender, sex, etc. have to be built on authenticity. The thing is that if you belong to a certain group whose identity is built around a sport, such as running, for instance, and you use the wrong jargon or you simply stop using the right jargon, the consequences will be there, and people will treat you with disdain, for example, or maybe neglect you from the group, right? Because you're not actually using the right vocabulary in order to pertain to that group, right? Okay. There's two big ones here now, language and culture. So there is a tradition in linguistic anthropology which addresses the relationship between language and culture. So culture here obviously defined in a different manner, right? Not as high culture or anything like that. Culture defined as whatever one has to know or believe in a society in a manner to operate in it in a way that is acceptable to its members and to do so in any role that they accept for any of themselves. And naturally, such knowledge is acquired, not genetically inherited. Culture is the know-how a person must possess to get to the end of the day without inconveniences. The key issue here is the nature of the specific relationship between a specific language and the culture in which it is used. However, cultural norms change and adapt over time and space. Now, there's directions of influence. There are several directions between language and culture. One is that social structure may influence or determine linguistic and behavioral structure. For example, the age grading phenomenon. Young children speak different from older children and mature adults. So we could argue that the social organization of these groups influences the linguistic organization of said groups. Other direction might be that the variation of the language one speaks may give a hint of the region one comes from, or social economic background, etc. In both directions, we might conclude that social structures determine linguistic structure. Another possibility is that linguistic structure and behavior might determine social structure and worldview. That view is behind the Whorfian hypothesis. For example, if we change some of the linguistic structures we use, we might be able to change sexist behavior. Another possibility is that language and society might influence each other. And a fourth possibility is that there is no such relationship at all. To extend a bit further on the Whorfian hypothesis, we could say that this hypothesis is based on the premise that the relationship between language and culture is deterministic. The social categories we create and how we perceive events and actions are constrained by the language we speak. Thus, different speakers of different languages will perceive the world insofar as the language they speak is structurally different. One claim is that if users of one language have certain words to describe certain things and others don't have those words, then users of the first language will find it easier to talk about those things in certain trades. We can perhaps see this because certain professions use technical terminology and some other professions don't. And perhaps those who use specialized terminology in their trades could notice the relevant differences around them in their environment. Now, this extension into the area of grammar could be argued to be the most relevant one, since classification systems of gender, substance, number are abundant and subtle. The strongest claim is that the grammatical categories in a given language not only help users of that language to perceive the world in a given way, but also constrain such perception. Therefore, you perceive only what your language allows you to perceive, and you are also limited by such perceptions. There are obvious ways in which the Whorfian hypothesis can create controversy. For example, if the inventory of ready-made words in your language determine which concepts you were able to understand, well, how would you learn new concepts at all? How would you learn anything new? Whorf studied Hopi and other Native American languages and compared them to European languages and realized that Hopi and other languages provide a process orientation towards the world, whereas European languages such as English, German, or French fix orientation towards time and space. And finally, there's this thing called correlations. It's a way in which we understand that it is possible to claim a relationship between certain features of a language and social structure, and such correlation has been long part of sociolinguistics. Such approach is called variationist sociolinguistics. Anyway, guys, this is it for today. We'll dive a little more into other aspects of sociolinguistics. I hope you liked it, and please do not forget to subscribe. Bye-bye.